Good morning, everyone. I'm Maureen Reedy, the President and CEO of the Paley Center for Media, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this morning's Paley Dialogue, a conversation with John Martin. John is Chairman and CEO of Turner. His portfolio, as most of you know, includes CNN, CNN International, CNN.com, and HLN, TBS, TNT, Turner Classic Musics, and True TV, Cartoon Network, and Adult Swim, and of course, last but not least, Turner Sports. I'm so happy and proud to also let you all know that he is a valued member of the Paley Board of Trustees. As he sees it, technology will be the differentiator as the television industry continues to face disruption. This morning, in conversation with Matthew Garahan, the global media editor of the Financial Times, he will discuss the impact of technology over the next 5 years and why he sees this as the biggest opportunity for the industry and the biggest win for consumers. I'm especially thrilled to see some of our other trustees that are here with us in the audience this morning. I'd like to welcome Jeff Sands, John Josephson, and Stan Schuman, as well as Stephen Hill from our LA Board of Governors. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for all of your support throughout the year. We're also delighted to have so many of our Media Council members here with us this morning, and I just mentioned for those of you who aren't yet members, we invite you to consider joining this very special group to participate in more very special events like this. As a side note, those of you might want to get your calendars out, our next Paley Dialogue in New York will be here on November 4th. We'll be hosting Adriana Cisneros and Yannick Bolloré, two of the world's youngest leaders of global media and marketing, and they'll be in conversation with Aryeh Berkoff, CEO of LionTree Advisors, the private investment firm behind so many of the biggest deals in media, technology, and communications. I'd like to extend our warmest, greatest thanks to McKinsey, our official knowledge partner, and to FreeWheel. We thank you so much for supporting this event this morning. And now I'm honored to welcome to the stage John Martin, along with our esteemed moderator, Matthew Garahan of the Financial Times. Thank you.
So how are you?
I'm good.
How's your back?
Oh, my back. I had spinal surgery in February. I'm good.
That's good.
I'm good.
Isn't he moving around pretty well for somebody who had spinal surgery?
David Levy, our president, is here. We spar every week. So I'm losing. No, I feel good. Thank you for asking.
So in our introduction, we're going to talk about technology and how television is changing because of technology, and also the opportunities that exist for guys like you, for companies like Turner. I mean, from where I sit and from, I guess, where a lot of people sit, technology is terrific because it creates lots of choice and new options, new services. But it looks like it also increases competition, and it looks outwardly that it might be making things more tricky for you guys. Is that the wrong view or the right view?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Next question.
Next question.
Listen, I think there has never been a more intellectually interesting time to be in the video content business, and there's never been a time where there are more challenges and more opportunities. And that sounds cliche, but it's actually true. And so I've been at Turner now, I've been at Time Warner for about 23 years. I've been at Turner for a little less than 3 years. But the path that we're on at Turner is nothing short of a complete transformation of the entire company. So if you think about the past, and Maureen went through the portfolio of brands that Turner owns and operates, which are formidable. I mean, we have the most highly concentrated portfolio of brands in the United States, and significant brand strength around the world and growing. But we used to be in the business as an advertising-supported basic cable network company of essentially renting content from other producers or studios. We built up enormous monetization capabilities, and then once we were done and the window that we acquired the content for was completed, we would give the content back to the producers, and then we would go and look for other content.
And they would monetize it themselves
downstream in other
right.
windows, and exactly.
Right.
But as you said, technology and competition, so barriers to entry of distribution have fallen dramatically. The proliferation of content available and destinations for people to consume content are also growing dramatically. So the challenge, but the opportunity and the position that we have is, number one, how do we keep our brands vibrant and relevant in this world where there's a shifting landscape between distribution and content? And I think we're in an advantaged position having the scale and the brands that we have. But first and foremost, and we started on this journey a number of years ago, we all got together as a senior management team and said, we need to start to own and control the content that's being exhibited on our brands. So being in the business of merely renting other people's content and then giving it back probably wasn't the best thing to do. So we have now, moved aggressively to increasing our budgets of original programming. We are rebranding our two biggest network brands here in the United States, TBS and TNT. And we are also moving very, very quickly with meaningful technology investments to be able to not only have a better sense of who our customers are, which is going to improve our monetization, but also starting to think about how over time we might be able to control consumer experiences in a much bigger way than we've been able to do historically, just merely being reliant on cable, satellite, and telco companies.
Right.
So it's a complete end-to-end transformation between owning and controlling the intellectual property, knowing who our consumers are and having the data to be able to understand who they are and understand then how to better monetize them, improve consumer experiences, which we're absolutely committed to doing. In fact, starting in the fourth quarter of this year, one of our networks, True TV, is going to cut our commercial ad load in half in order to improve the consumer experience, and we're going to learn a lot there. But 3, 4, 5 years from now, Turner is going to be a very, very different company than we are today.
Is it a risk? I mean, good original content's not cheap, right? There are other people bidding for the best projects, wanting to, to put them on their own services, and you also get a lot of money from cable satellite providers, $5-6 billion a year.
Yeah, we love those guys.
Right.
Love them.
Yeah.
Love them.
So,
they're our best friends.
So are you risking anything by
No, I don't
going
think
direct?
so, because we're not at odds with them. In fact, in terms of innovating or developing new consumer models or developing new distribution models, the first place we would like to go is with them. And they're in the best position, arguably, to innovate around distribution.
Right.
And we have a deal with Sling, which is associated with Dish Network. Doing those types of innovations off of our existing partnership deals would be absolutely our first and primary preference, so to speak. In terms of risk of original programming, I think it's yes or no. We don't have a choice. And so if you look at this year, I think this year TBS in the United States will finish #1. TNT will finish top 5. CNN is, let's face it, is on fire. I mean, what Jeff Zucker and the team have done there is nothing short of spectacular.
Helped a little by Donald Trump and a smidgen maybe.
You'll see. 2017 is going to be another fantastic year at CNN. But Cartoon Network is doing really, really terrifically well. Adult Swim is the primary delivery vehicle for adults 18 to 34 for 34 straight quarters. I mean, we've got really strong, powerful brands. And now the question is, how do we take the nearly $4 billion a year that we spend on programming? And that's an important figure because scale provides a lot of advantage. I mean, it doesn't guarantee success, but when you have that amount of scale that you can put to work annually, and you've got networks that are already in lead scale positions and are already really terrifically loved by consumers, I think you have an advantage of busting through the crowd and succeeding. And my own personal view is there is going to be a continued fork in the road in this industry, and there are going to be the haves and the have-nots. And the strongest players will get stronger, and the marginal and weaker players are going to increasingly have a difficult time. So fortunately, I think, I think all the Time Warner brands, but particularly for Turner, what I run, we're going to be on the getting stronger side of the road.
Do you think that the big distributors that carry your channels now have done a good enough job in making your programming available in other places to their subscribers and innovating in the way that you're talking about now?
They do a terrific job being a retail front and marketing our channels. They have not innovated quickly enough. If Netflix is a great case study for all of us in the traditional video business, you know, there always used to be an argument of, well, what's the most important? Is it content or is it distribution? And I would submit now there's the third leg of the stool, which is the consumer experience. And we can't ignore that, because what consumers have basically said is, if the consumer experience is good enough, I will actually accept content that may not be everything I want, but the consumer experience is so important that I can get it anywhere I want to. It's easy to access, it works. I've got parental controls, so my kids could be watching and I don't have to worry about them meandering into something that I don't want them to see. And so I think that the traditional facilities-based distributors, the cable, satellite, telcos, they have not done a good job innovating enough on the consumer experience. You know, the idea of TV everywhere is a really, really big idea. The authentication process is still far too cumbersome, far too clumsy. And
well, meanwhile, Netflix grows into this behemoth, right, with a great, easy, clean user interface, and is on track for 100 million subscribers. I mean, they sort of stepped into the ground that was ceded to them by the
well, they've been
cable
smart.
Yeah.
They've been a fast innovator, and they've sort of done an end around the traditional facilities-based companies, because they're not encumbered by having to own the infrastructure,
Right.
but they understand what consumers want. So they've been a great injection of innovation into the ecosystem.
Right.
And I think the traditional players are really waking up and starting to innovate more quickly. We'd like to help them do that. And as I said before, we're also taking the responsibility into our own hands of making sure that the technology that we have internally in-house can ultimately be responsible for the consumer experience if and when we choose to move in that direction.
Right. So currently you guys have a dual revenue stream model, right? Advertising.
Principally, we have a third revenue stream, but it's principally two revenues.
But advertising and carrying distribution fees.
Yeah, distribution fees are about 60%, advertising is about 40%.
So as you move into going direct, that's what you're talking about, retailing directly to consumers, right? How do you see the mix changing?
Well, I think it's going to be an evolution.
Right.
And I think the word evolution is important, because I think a lot of people think that it's a switch. It's either here or it moves over here. So what we're doing at Turner is we're continuing to prove to our existing distribution partners that we add a lot of value. And you can see that in the subscription revenue growth that we're posting this year, which is domestically, you know, in the low teens growth rates off of a very, very big revenue base that's in excess of $4 billion. So that's a demonstration that we have a lot of value that is being recognized by our existing partners.
Right.
We're also working with the Slings and the Sony Views and a handful of other potential new network aggregators, the virtual MVPDs, if you will. And we want to be working with them and part of those packages, because I've been saying this now for a long time. If you turn on your average, you know, cable dial, there are way too many networks in existence today that need to disappear.
Yeah.
They need to disappear because nobody's watching them. So if you have a network that nobody's watching, that's not good.
Right.
You know, I mean, I remember back in my university days, you know, there's a supply and demand, and if there's no demand,
This isn't
there's
difficult.
oversupply, this really isn't difficult.
Yeah.
So that will shake out, and the strongest brands will survive. And I think the virtual players have a fresh start at trying to crack the code to do that. But I would put a challenge in front of the companies that are trying to be new entrants. Nobody's figured out how to do it. Nobody's figured out how to do it and give a bundle of networks to consumers that they really care about.
Right.
And so it's proving to be difficult. But that is sort of the next step in the evolution. And then the step after that, we're already doing. So October 19th, we're really, really proud of. We'll be launching an over-the-top service called Filmstruck, which is coming out of our Turner Classic Movies group. And it'll be a direct-to-consumer OTT offering. And we've got a number of other ideas that are short of a direct over the top offering of all of our networks, but we're looking for opportunistic ways to reach consumers. And another point I would just like to make is, this business has been built on the back of overnight Nielsen ratings. And everybody looks and goes, well, what's your rating? What's your rating? Well, the rating, first of all, there are measurement issues now with the rating because more and more viewing is happening on a delayed basis, which is not being captured. But the second thing that I think is a very, very critical thing to understand is that this business is moving in the direction of engagement and not necessarily just reach. Like, we need fans. We need fans more than casual viewers.
How do you measure those? How does it come? How do you
well,
guys?
We got to improve our technology capabilities so we understand who these people are. And basically, what you're looking for is return business.
Right.
Like, we know when people are coming back and they're viewing the brands and the services that we have over and over and over again. And what we need to do a better job at Turner, and I would submit the media industry, is when you find a brand or a franchise, think about how to monetize that on a 360-degree basis. It doesn't have to be on your linear network. You can create experiential opportunities. You can monetize through consumer products and licensing and merchandising. And just the more times that you can have individuals touch your brand, the more that you've got them locked in, and the more and more ways that people will be willing to spend money with you.
So do you envisage a period in the future where you're selling, where you have your carriage agreements as you do now, where you're selling your content to downstream providers like Netflix and others, and where you're also selling direct-to-consumer subscriptions? So it's sort of a three-pronged approach of sorts.
Yes, carefully balanced.
Yeah, right.
And I mean that because, again, we're not in an adversarial position with our partners, our traditional partners. They are our favorite partners. But I think there are plenty of opportunities either through windowing or, more importantly, we have very significant content creation capabilities. The ability to produce new and original content, perhaps in a branded environment that people already know and love. And if we can do that, there's nothing to say that we can't just immediately take that and go directly to consumer to provide, again, getting back to the fans concept, if you could provide your fans with more and more opportunities to engage with your brand that don't necessarily have to be within the existing multi-channel TV environment, I think that will provide incremental opportunities for monetization and engagement.
So what does this all mean for advertising? And how are you helping brands? How are you helping?
I'm very bullish on advertising. I know a lot of people are sort of questioning the long-term viability of video content advertising. I think we at Turner are really, really bullish. But the approach that we're taking is one of trying to provide a leadership position in the sense of, first of all, having innovative leadership advertising products that provide a lot more insight into who the audiences are. And we rolled a number of really leadership products, innovative products out during our upfront, been received extremely well, trying to move the industry more towards audience-based selling versus just selling day parts and demos. Audience-based just simplistically would mean, hey, listen, Matthew, you like BMWs, we know you like BMWs, we can offer you to an advertiser as a BMW intender, and how valuable is that information to an advertiser? As David Levy likes to say, he's never been able to monetize anybody over the age of 54. The demo of 25 to 54, I don't know, I'm almost 54. I'm impressionable. I'm susceptible to brands.
So you've got a checkbook?
Right? I've got some discretionary money, more than I had when I was 24.
Right.
So why do we, why is that the cutoff? It makes absolutely no sense. The other thing that makes no sense is that there's a significant discount when individuals on television watch in non-prime day parts. That's very different than digital, when all the digital companies need to do is deliver impressions and deliver individuals, whether somebody's consuming content at 8 p.m. at night or whether they're consuming it at 3 a.m. in the morning, it doesn't matter. So that's number one. Number two, we have to make our ads more relevant. And that's something that we're, again, taking the responsibility for. We're moving down the path of branded content. We've got an organization in the news group called Courageous, which is making branded content. We've got a digital live production studio called Super Deluxe. Thanks. I feel like David is like, I'm the... Super Deluxe, which can also have production capabilities to make branded content.
Right.
One of the reasons why we're confident that we can reduce the overall ad loads, but make the ads more relevant to advertisers and marketers is because we can create almost longer form storytelling. That is the advertisement that provides a much more seamless experience than currently what is happening with 30 and 60-second spots.
Right.
So it's very, very early days, but we have had lower ad loads on Animal Kingdom, which was one of our dramas on TNT.
Which I enjoyed very much, by the way.
And it's a great show. It's been removed for a
show.
second season. Come back.
Yeah.
And it's a show. It's a great show produced by Warner Brothers. We're happy to be in business with them. And but what we've seen is that there is less dislocation in audience in and out of the commercial breaks.
Right.
And there's better ad recall. And we think ratings are higher.
So the viewers stick around.
Yeah.
Because they're not being interrupted by as many ads.
Yeah.
You see the date that
number one, they're not being interrupted by so many. There's a lot of people sneezing in here. What is going on? This is like a petri dish of germs in this group here. Sorry about that. So they're being less interrupted, and it's improving the overall experience. And then when you make advertisements that people actually want to watch, it's part of the content experience. I mean, during the NCAA, we had Charles Barkley in a number of Capital One commercials, which were just as entertaining, well, maybe not as entertaining as the basketball game itself, but Charles is a pretty entertaining guy. And so, you know, moving more along the lines down that path. And then the last thing I would say is we have to improve our monetization capability for delayed viewing, because it doesn't make sense that we're still overwhelmingly getting paid on live, or whether it's C3. I mean, now we did some C7 deals during the upfront, but more and more of our original shows are being viewed over, you know, C28 or even longer. And when you have people viewing your show on demand, those are people that are self-selecting, I want to watch this show. Those are incredibly engaged viewers, and we need to do a better job as an industry of figuring out how to monetize that viewership.
So if you're selling direct, I guess you do know a lot about the customer at the other end. But if you're going via a cable company or a satellite company or some other way, you may not. But you need to know as much as you can, given what you're saying about your audience. You need to know about those viewers, don't you? So
well,
how do you get that data?
I think it's going to be a little bit of flavor of both. I mean, I think more and more it's going to be working in partnership with those partners.
Right. But is building kind of huge data sets, is that all in your thinking, trying to work out?
We're doing it. We've done a large part of it. We built something called the Turner Data Cloud. So 2.5 years ago, at Turner, we had 29 content management systems in the United States, none of which spoke to one another, and all of which had small little amounts of data, not much, and there was no strategy to gather data. So I'm really proud of what our technology team has been able to do in a very, very short period of time. We now have the Turner Data Cloud, which is one central repository of all of our consumer data. And the way we're essentially thinking about it is that's sort of the data set that we're plugging in all of the brands into for universal knowledge sharing.
It sounds like a tech company rather than a...
We're transforming into, I mean, you know, listen, if we'd like Turner to be known for anything, it's number one, to be one of the greatest creative content companies in the world. Number two, to be one of the leading tech companies in terms of the business that we're in. And then the third thing is we want to be known as being a great place to work.
So when you talk about brands and about the portfolio that you have, and about going direct and over the top, do you envisage a time when, I mean, would you bundle your brands, sell them direct to consumers in that way? I mean, will they be part of skinny bundles or selling individual subs for each brand? How do you see it panning out?
Look, the truthful answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think one of our job as leaders at Turner and as leaders in the industry is we have to make sure that our companies are flexible enough that we can move in whatever direction ultimately proves to be the best route for the consumer. So if we were not anticipating, and this is not 2 or 3 years from now, but if we were not anticipating out 5 years from now, 7 years from now, what might be the likely way that consumers are buying video content, I would say we'd have our head in the sand. So while our business is still growing, and we're going to have, I mean, we're doing great this year. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to do. We've ramped up margins, we've grown attractively revenues, we're still continuing to focus on delivering on all of our near-term expectations, but at the same time, we have to plan for the future. And the future is going to mean that from a technological standpoint, we have to have the internal capabilities to pivot in whatever direction is necessary for consumers.
Right. When you talked about the new generation of virtual MPVDs, Sony are planning one. I think YouTube are planning one. Have you seen any that you think really hit the nail on the head, are going to be a success in terms of the sort of user experience? Or
we'd like to work with all of them. I mean, that's maybe a little bit cliche, but there are.
Hulu's got one coming out.
We've got. We have an investment. Time Warner has an investment in Hulu, a 10% owner. They've announced ambitions to launch a virtual MVPD next year. We'll be in that, if and when they launch that. And look, I'm not unbiased. I'm sitting up here as the CEO of Turner. I think it's going to be really hard to launch a bundle of networks that's attractive if our biggest brands are not in. That's
presumably your rivals are probably saying the same things, right? Everybody wants their key brands in
well,
these
we make
things.
money the more households we're in, the more people we reach, and the more places we are. So, but it's got to be done thoughtfully, and importantly, the new entrants can't undercut our existing partners. Like we want to continue to be great partners with our existing satellite telco and cable companies. So the reason why you haven't seen a massive influx of new entrants is because it's not easy to do. And it's not easy to construct a portfolio of networks that actually would be valuable to consumers. I think it is going to happen, and I think it will happen. And I think there will be some entrants in the next 12 to 24 months. Who they are and exactly what those bundles look like, I don't know. And in terms of consumer experience, yeah, we've seen some really interesting user interfaces, but at the same time, the traditional players, I think, are really, especially the biggest well-capitalized traditional players, are also beginning to innovate at a much faster pace. It's all good for consumers, and I would submit it's all good for companies like Turner.
Does having the sports rights that you do, the basketball rights, strengthen your hand in terms of being able to say we've got leverage when you're negotiating, bundling these channels together?
Fantastically. Yeah. We have enormous capabilities at Turner in live production of events. I was at the CNN debate down in Coral Gables, Florida, and the gentleman who ran the cable, literally ran the cable for the event, took me around the whole facility and showed me what it took to actually produce a live show, and I was blown away. These are capabilities that are not easy to do. And I'm so proud of what CNN has done with respect to its coverage of the presidential election and hosting more live forums than all of the other networks combined.
Right.
But if you combine that live production capability with, yes, we have long-term relationships with the NBA, which is critically important to us, and Major League Baseball playoffs, and then of course the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, which now we've extended out till 2032.
Wow. That's a long deal. 2032.
Yeah.
Wow. It probably cost a bit too, right?
It's a great partnership.
Yeah.
It's cost a bit, but it was very attractive for us.
Yeah.
Having that, when you look at changing viewership habits, where more and more video content is being consumed on a delayed basis, people are not consuming sports on a delayed basis.
Right.
And having the ability to exhibit sport on our networks, and then even over time, perhaps on our digital properties, is incredibly important. And it really cements the value proposition that we have at our networks to our distributors and to our consumers.
Are you concerned? I mean, you don't have NFL rights, but there's been reports of a sort of drop-off in NFL ratings this year. You're not concerned that sort of sports dominance in live viewing might be slipping a little bit?
I'm not concerned. Not for the sports that we have.
Yeah.
We have must-have sports. 80% of our sports content is essentially championship or playoffs related. So I feel pretty good. I mean, Turner, and this, by the way, this strategy long predated me, but Turner's commitment to be in the sports that matter, I think was a really, really smart approach, as opposed to, you know, over investing in and potentially having an abundance of inventory.
Okay. So 5 years from now, what is it, when I go home to watch TV, what does it look like? Do I go home and look at my woeful Time Warner cable subscription and look at channels that way, or do I look at your channels another way? How am I most likely to do
I think the greatest thing is, as a consumer, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
I mean, we haven't really talked about mobile. I mean, I think one of the biggest transformations that it's happening in the industry is more and more brands are being created mobile first. And more people are watching live video stream content in a coffee shop than ever before. I mean, so we have, we acquired a company a number of years ago called Bleacher Report,
Right.
which I believe is the #1 publisher on the web. Is that factually correct, or am I? Social publisher on the web. And incredibly successful. And if anybody is a sports enthusiast, I would really, if you don't use Bleacher Report, go and download TeamStream, which is this incredible app that provides you a mobile ability to essentially personalize the things that you care about. You can follow people, you can follow teams, you can follow sports. I'm a soccer fan, so it's got better coverage of European football than any other sporting organization I've seen. Well, we're just launched CNN Money Stream. Now, what's exciting about that is if you're in business, all of a sudden, you're like an athlete. Because Money Stream was basically influenced and helped built by the Bleacher Report team working with the CNN team in collaboration. So we took the learnings from what people cared about on Bleacher, and we basically knew from the way that people were consuming finance news that there was an essential application that was very similar. So you could download Money Stream now. It looks fantastic, and you can personalize it and follow the industries you want, the companies you want, and the CEOs you want. Everybody should go download Jeff Bewkes. As you know, we're going to propel him into star status.
That's right.
But that was all done with almost a mobile-first mentality, because CNN Money is a brand that lends itself, you know, it wasn't a huge established linear TV brand, so we can take it and do things differently and experimentally and innovatively in ways that we haven't done before. More and more, I think all of us in media have to be thinking more about mobile first, because 5 years from now, I mean, I see it in my own home.
Right.
My 11-year-old and my 9-year-old are massive video consumers. I mean, more than I'd probably like. Now, I'm a good parent, so they're not just sitting in front of the video screen all day, but they're gamers.
Right.
And to them, they're iPad and iPhone viewers. So the 80-inch TV is sitting on the wall. That thing is always turned off. And for them, engaging with their video content, it's a personal experience. So they love each other. They practically sit on each other's lap, like when they're consuming things, but they have their headphones on. Sometimes they're playing the same video game against each other, internet connected. But you sit there and you watch and you say, like, this is just so different than when I grew up and we all sat watching Hawaii Five-0 on Sunday nights around the big TV, where we used to argue who used to get up to change the manual channel on the screen. So
it's got big implications for Turner and others, right? This shift.
Huge. So we have to lean into that. I mean, that is the future. And as I said, I think it provides some challenges, but it does provide some very, very significant opportunities for strongly branded, well-capitalized companies such as Turner and Time Warner more broadly.
So I want to get into some questions from the audience. Before we do, can you talk a little bit about the bets you've made with Mashable, Refinery, 29? digital bets, what you're doing in that area?
Yeah, I'd like to think of them as more than just bets.
Right.
Strategic
investments, of course. Sorry, that's right. Strategic investments.
Yes, we've made some minority investments in, as you said, Mashable and Refinery 29 most recently, where and Time Warner as a minority investment in a digital destination called Bustle as well.
Right.
These are digital destinations that have brands that speak to a particular genre of consumer. And so for us, it's about getting closer to those companies and extending the reach and the engagement of big audiences.
Right.
And because of the significant capabilities that we bring at Turner, whether it's from a cross-promotion standpoint or a marketing standpoint or a monetization standpoint and a content creation standpoint, we think that these are smart things to do. I mean, so just by way of quick example, Refinery 29, which really has a massive, largely female audience, having a personality on TBS like a Samantha Bee,
Right.
who is on fire right now and just beginning to really dominate social conversation. Doing things with Refinery where we can further extend her brand, we just think are smart things to do.
Right.
So that's the idea behind it.
Okay. Good. There's a question back here. Well, several.
And immediately goes to the Wall Street
All right.
analyst.
I was worried about that. On? Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you.
Very good, John.
Still can't hear you.
I was curious about your comments about direct-to-consumer and all the work you guys are doing. And if you look at HBO and the success they've had, and your investment in iStream Planet, what Disney's doing with BAMTech, what are the things you're looking for, either internally at the company or out in the world, that would precipitate Turner going and launching, a $5 or $10 a month service to offer consumers on an Apple TV or connected PlayStation, access to all your content?
Thanks for the question, Ben. I'm only joking. We love you. And it'd be nice if you keep a buy rating or put a buy rating. Some investors may want to buy the Time Warner stock. So, look, I think that what we acquired, you mentioned, just for the benefit of others that may not be aware, we acquired a company called iStream Planet a couple of years ago. And it could be the leading live streaming IP service, frankly, on the planet right now, and just did the Olympics with NBC, 4,500 hours of live coverage, and it was flawless and scalable. And we love the fact that now it's inside the Turner family and the Time Warner family, because for us, that could be a very important platform as we think about adding options to our video distribution in the future. Your direct question of how do you think about a $5 to $10 offering is, we're not thinking about that yet. And I just want to be clear, we don't have discrete plans to go over the top with a bundle of our networks at a particular price point. But I'll go back to what I was mentioning a little bit earlier. It's really nice to have the capabilities internally if and when we decide to do that. It's fantastic to be in the same corporate family with HBO. Learning from them, learning from their HBO Now experience. Frankly, HBO is best in breed in so many ways. And our tech teams are collaborating in ways that, frankly, we haven't even done in the past at Time Warner. So iStream Planet, which has tremendous live capabilities, but also now will probably be making investments in it to build out its video on demand capabilities and to build out other types of capabilities so that it can be potentially an end-to-end solution if and when the time comes that it's important to do that. But again, it may not be, hey, let's take the HBO network and all the Time Warner networks and jumble them all together and offer a service. It could be more like the Filmstructs. We're in collaboration with Warner Brothers right now on certain ideas about how developing, co-owned services. And so I think the next few years, there's going to be a tremendous amount of experimentation and learning, and we'll continue to try to build on that. And at the same time, we at Turner would like to be on the forefront of the technology cycle so that we can get to ultimately where we want to go faster than everybody else.
Can you help us demystify kind of audience-based ad selling a little bit in terms of its scale? Because I know we see a lot of, clippings in the press, but certainly we'd want to understand, when do you expect that to be at scale? When do you expect it to be 100% of your ad inventory sold that way, or the large majority of it, so we could see where that's going?
So we had some real success this upfront with the idea of audience-based selling, and we have done deals, and we've had some nice receptivity from some marketers and some agencies.
Just tell us what audience-based selling is for those who don't know.
So essentially, it's as I said, instead of just selling day parts and demos, it's selling intention. It's selling individuals that you have an idea of what they're likely to be interested in.
But so it's very data-based on...
Yeah, much more heavily data-based. And it's also, it's day part agnostic. So I don't know if there's a microphone, David, maybe you can help me out here, because David has put out some very aggressive targets for percentage of inventory that we would like to have where we have contracts that is audience-based selling, and I'd like him to repeat that so it puts him on the record. And David, for anybody who doesn't know, is the president of Turner. He's responsible for most of our domestic businesses, and including ad sales.
So as John said, we did a lot of deals this year in the upfront, a lot meaning from last year, probably almost 150% increasing in audience-based targeting. You asked the question of when do we believe most of our inventory. We'll never sell all of our inventory in audience-based targeting. We have a goal of about 50% of our inventory being sold in audience-based by 2020. We use a lot of as John mentioned, our data cloud has to fill for us to make it more relevant. We use a lot of third-party data, Catalina data, set-top box data, and as we create some of our own data, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to get to that target. But as John mentioned earlier, the three things that it's going to be essential for us is we can now start selling day part agnostic, network agnostic, including all of our digital assets. And we're starting to reach a full audience, which is, as John mentioned also, anything above 54 years old is now included into our portfolio of impressions, which has been untapped before. So advertisers are really embracing this. We're using all of the technology that's available. I think we are in a leadership position and in this, and we're hoping that some of our competitors get along in this as well, because ultimately digital dollars will start shifting back to television.
Yeah, and to thank you, David, and just look to amplify that point. I think the last point that David made is really important. This is not something that we think we can own at Turner. We would all be better served if the industry got around this idea, because when you talk to the agencies and the marketers, they don't want to be looking at Turner's proprietary data and NBC's proprietary data, because there's always going to be a suspicion around what's real, what's not real. We've seen some big digital companies kind of say that what they've been reporting has not been real. So if we can get the industry moving in a direction where it makes it easier to facilitate the buying and selling, we would all be better served. We're taking the responsibility at Turner to just keep moving, but we'd love everybody else to come along.
Question over here.
I have a question about user experience and future-proofing. Young millennials, 2/3 are ad blocking, 69% are pirating, and 67% don't think there's anything wrong with pirating. They think it's legal. How are you dealing with ad blocking and piracy?
I have not seen those statistics. We should take all those people out and shoot them.
They're your children.
I would tell you there is no ad blocking going on in my home.
Yes. None that you know of. Yeah.
Look, I think, listen, I appreciate the question. Our brands at Turner in the United States reach 70% of all millennials every month, which is an enormous statistic, but it's one that I think very, very importantly, we're faced with this exact question. So I think there are a number of things that we can do to continue to try to ensure that we will have certainty of monetization despite whatever happens. I mean, there's obviously certain legal issues around ad blocking that we'll be pursuing. But if you think about a world where, let's say everybody starts ad blocking, which is not going to happen. I mean, my mother is not going to ad block. And once David starts selling audience-based selling, my 79-year-old mother will be able to monetize somehow. But you know, there's nothing to say that our future products and services can't be more ad-free or ad-diminished or less reliant. If we can find fans, people are willing to spend money on things that they love and care about. So, you know, we haven't talked about, but the idea of how is the video content business going to continue to transition and transform? Virtual reality, augmented reality. You know, I happen to have a view that less is more. You know, the companies that have fewer things that they're working on, but just franchises that can go deep and broad. You know, how many people are Game of Thrones fans? I am fanatical about Game of Thrones. Like, HBO could sell me anything and I would be buying it and I would be willing to pay for it because it's that important to me. So I'm not suggesting that that's not an issue and it's not something that we need to address as an industry. But I don't believe that the video content business is going to go the way of the music business a la Napster. I don't believe that. And the good news is we don't have our head in the sand, and we have some time to adapt our business models and our offerings to ultimately the way consumers want to get our stuff.
There's another one over here.
When you talk about there are too many channels and they're going to shake out and the others, one thing that surprises me is how little concentration there is. I think about 60% of the country with a digital antenna can get almost as good reception or better reception on given nights than you'll get over the copper wire. And so if you drop your basic cable costs to get your must-carry channels, and if you're having Amazon delivered to you the next day, you've already given them the $100 a year, and you buy Netflix, you can substitute in probably 60% of the country $30 and must carry for a $125 base. I just don't think it's been promoted enough that you can get very good must carry reception with a new digital TV and a 6-inch square piece of glass.
So this is, thank you for the question. This is exactly to my point of positioning our company so that we can move in whatever direction consumers ultimately move in. So we don't own a broadcast network. We get about 85, close to 90% of our subscription revenue from 4 brands: TNT, TBS, CNN, and Cartoon Network Adult Swim. That is a really highly concentrated portfolio of very highly valued brands. So if, and this is completely hypothetical, if the world moves in a direction where more and more consumers wake up to the fact that they can get a digital antenna and get broadcast receptivity for free, and they look up and say, you know, I like Netflix, I like Hulu because it gives me most of my broadcast content anyway, and I love HBO. I, as the CEO of Turner, love being in the same company as HBO. I mean, if the world moves in a direction, and again, I'm not suggesting this is where it's going to go, where a bundle of HBO and the Turner channels and all of the great library content and iconic franchises that Warner produces and continues to produce for, I think that would be highly valued to a very large percentage of the country. So I think we're positioned in a way that we can move in lots of different directions here. And I think that's our job, is to make sure that we can be flexible.
Well, unless there are any other questions. Oh, we have one over here. This is the final question from Justin
Hi.
Deeney at the back.
How are you?
Hi.
How do you think about social media networks like Facebook and Snapchat? Are they frenemies? Are they distribution partners? Somewhere in between? How are you thinking about them, particularly as you talk about fans and engagement with your viewers?
Yes. Another easy yes/no question. Look, I think if somebody who said, would have said to me 5 years ago, 7 years ago, that Turner would be in competition with Google and Facebook for monetization of video content, I might have discounted that reality a little bit. But fast forward to today, look at where we're at. There is a massive amount of video content being consumed on each one of those platforms. And they are massive distribution platforms in some form or another. Then you throw Snapchat in. I mean, in some respects, it's fantastic for our brands. I mean, having CNN on Snapchat Discover, having an increasing relationship between Bleacher Report and Snapchat, having CNN work extremely collaboratively with Facebook, and Facebook fairly confidently telling us that one of the brands that they like the most is CNN because of what it stands for. That's just more ways for us to get our brands in front of consumers, because that's where consumers are going. Much of Bleacher Report's consumption now is happening off platform, so to speak. So that's great, because I don't think there are that many brands that are created or have been created that actually people care that much about. So on the one hand, fantastic. But on the other hand, how do we make sure that we get our fair share of the monetization from the consumption? And that's something that we're going to be continuing to think a lot about and work hard at, because the risk or the danger, full transparency, is that these other platforms get so big that they're powerful enough to start hollowing out our economics. So we're laser focused on this, and we're going to make sure that we've got business plans in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. So I think, for now, we need to be where the consumers are. We want to be where the consumers are, and we have brands that are strong enough that these really popular platforms care about, which is first the most important thing. I mean, if these platforms didn't even care about us, that wouldn't be a good thing. And then the next thing is, how do we work closer and more in partnership with them so that we can help build their business and they can help build our business in a reciprocal and mutually beneficial fashion. Thank you for the question.
Well, thank you. We have to wrap it up there. But thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
very much.